All right, welcome to the show today, everyone. My guest today is Erik Bergman. He's founded a company called Catena Media, which does online lead generation largely for the gambling industry. In 2016, he took the company public and made 15 million euros in one day. When the high of making millions wore off after a few weeks, he realized that life isn't just about making money. And today he's the founder of Great.com, which is what he calls a next generation charity. A company focused on making as much money as possible, only to give it all away. He's also the host of the podcast Becoming Great. I want to bring Erik on the show to find out how he built up Catena Media, what it was like going from humble beginnings to making millions, the emotional toll such rapid growth had on his personal life, and what he's doing now with Great.com. So Erik, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, James. It's a pleasure to be here.
Of course. So I'd love to start a bit with your background and your story. So could you just tell us a bit about your story and how you grew up?
Okay, so sure. So if we start this very, very early, I was the kid in kindergarten who was always playing with Legos, or I was building sandcastles, or I was trying to stop a stream with water with sticks and stuff. So building things was a very crucial part of everything I did as a kid, and I think that's something that has stuck with me ever since, that I always wanted to build on something, creating something, and if it wasn't on sandcastles, it's became companies and projects and all kinds of things down the line. So that's been a big part of who I am ever since the beginning.
Yeah, so you've always been into building things, which translated to companies. That's awesome. And it sounds like you're always a little bit entrepreneurial as well, because I understand when you were young, you raided garbage cans and collected cans for money. Could you tell a bit about that?
Okay, yeah, sure. So me and my brother, he took me on all of these different entrepreneurial journeys. I think he was the entrepreneurial mastermind to start with, and this is back in 94 maybe. So I'm 6 years old and he's 9 years old, and we are raiding all the garbage cans in our city, because in Sweden, if you return a soda can to the store, you get about 5 cents for a soda can. And we did this all summer, just running around on all the beaches, trying to see how much we could gather, and every day was a treasure hunt. And we had this little house in our garden that we filled up with all these cans that we found. And by the end of the summer, we took them back to the store, and we got this receipt that it said how much money we had, and it was just over 100 euros. And it was like, that was a fortune for a 6-year-old. You can only imagine how it feels to hold that receipt when you're doing this all summer. And yeah, so we returned it to the store. We got this money, and we invested the money in Apple stocks. No, we didn't. No.
If only.
We bought ice cream and candy for it, but it could have been. So that was the first entrepreneurial journey that my brother took me on, the first of many.
I love it. It's a cool story. And tell me a bit about, what was high school like for you? I'm curious to know what that whole dynamic was like, because I understand you moved around at some point, and then school was a bit of an interesting experience for you. So could you talk about that a bit?
Okay, so if we can back off a little bit and start with when I start school at age 7 or so. So in the first, between years 1 and 6 in Sweden, 7 to 12 years old, I never really managed to get friends in a good way. It was a hard time for me in general, and I remember one instance that gives a good story for this. I'm in the locker room, and it's a very common locker room. You got these yellow stone walls, and I'm just sitting there with my face in my hands, and around me is my team, and they're screaming, "You are gay, you are gay, you are gay," and I can just feel how the tears are coming up, and I'm telling myself, "No, Erik, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry." And in a sign of desperation, I yawn very big and I wipe my eyes just to make it look like I'm not in pain and I'm not crying, but just being tired. And well, I don't think anyone really believed that, but it explains quite a bit about what that period of my life was. And so my last name in Swedish sounds almost like a gay man, which was unfortunate when you're a 10-year-old boy. And I'm not sure if that was the issue or if I've just never really managed to figure out how to get along with the other boys at that age. But it shaped my life a lot from 7 to 12. And then I started high school, or whatever it is when you're 13. I'm not sure what the names are for schools. And my family moved, so I got to start a different school than all the other kids that I used to know. And that became a big difference for me because somehow I managed to fit in, which I don't know what happened or how it happened, but I managed to get friends and belong. And the only thing there was that all the other kids were came from much wealthier families than I did. So I was in the rich school because we were living outside of the city and belonged to that district. And I was desperate to fit in, desperate to be a part of this, which I really wasn't. And so I spent all money that I could and always tried to get my parents to buy me the clothes, the cell phone, the whatever thing that would make me fit in, because I was so desperate not to lose these friends that I finally had gotten. So already here, the materialistic aspect of money became very important for me and belonging in that sense. And it became a big part of my self-worth, and my insecurities were tied to that to a very large extent.
It makes sense. If you feel like that's the reason why you were fitting in with these kids, then obviously you'd want to do whatever you could to make money. I totally understand that. So when did you start playing poker?
So when I was 16, we changed school again according to the Swedish system. So I started a new school, and in my class, a guy had a calculator with poker on it, and I was like, "Hey, this sounds like fun." So we started playing poker instead of it. I think it was in a physics class, and physics wasn't that fun. So we started playing on his calculator, and then after that we went and bought this poker kit, and we started playing on all math classes or all physics classes, and that became the biggest passion of mine. I've always loved playing card games. We've done that a lot in my family, and I love math, so I've always been good at math, and poker taught me a lot about psychology and learning to get yourself into the other person's head. So basically that was all I did through school, and I got really good at it.
Mm-hmm. And when did you start actually making money from that?
So at age 17, I started playing online, and I started playing under a fake ID and because I wasn't old enough, and playing these free tournaments, and I started winning money quite rapidly. So by age 18, I started winning a lot of money compared to, the wealth of my friends around me. So I made anywhere between 1,000 to 10,000 euros a month when I was 18. And obviously it was a lot of money. And since all of these insecurities were built up in me beforehand, and money kind of became my identity, I always had been the poor kid, and I was desperate now to show that what I had, and I was so proud of having this identity rather than the other identity. So I won a lot of money playing poker, and I lost a lot of money trying to impress other people.
What sort of things were you spending it on?
Well, what do you spend money on if you're 18-year-old and want to impress other people? So obviously clothes. I got a car. I got a big flashy TV, like chrome and stuff. It looked super cool. I bought a lot of meaningless champagne to impress people. Yeah, these kinds of things were my spending habits, and it worked out for a while, and then I stopped winning playing poker, and I had built this identity and this very expensive lifestyle around it. So I kind of got broke not from losing money in poker, but from getting spending habits from poker and then spending it on meaningless crap.
Yeah. What was that experience like? Because you've grown up and you're you never felt like you fit in. You were kind of always felt like this poor kid compared to everyone else. And finally, you're making money. You're showing everyone that you're successful in making all this money, and showing that off by buying all these things. And then suddenly that stops. What was that experience like?
So at first it was an amazing experience. I was very proud of what I did. I felt like, wow, I can show this, and it became my identity. And for the first time I felt like this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to play poker for the rest of my life, because obviously everyone wonders what to do. And I got really good at it, and it became an identity that I felt that I had been lacking. I've never really had anything I was proud of, and now suddenly I did. And then close to when I'm finishing school, so I'm 19, I got this apartment, I got this car, I got these things, and I stopped winning. And I felt like I lost whoever I was, which was this shell of something, and it was just an empty, disappointing feeling of, wow, what now? It felt like an identity or a part of me died with that, or the future that I had foreseen. So it was kind of like going through a tough breakup with something that I loved. I loved playing poker, I just couldn't handle it in a good way. And that became the death of that. So I think that I had to break up with an identity that I was very closely attached to. Yeah.
Must have been challenging. So what actually happened next in that phase of your life where you realized that couldn't be something that was sustainable? What did you do next after that?
Yeah, so I moved back to my parents' house, which obviously wasn't the proudest moment of my life. They were pretty happy that I didn't play poker at the moment, at least. And I tried to get a job. I didn't manage to. I failed applying for some jobs, and instead I asked my childhood friend Emil if he wanted to start a company with me. So I called him up, and he was like, okay, sure, what's your business idea? And it's like, I don't have a business idea. So he was like, okay, sure, let's do it. So we started from there, and the first business that actually became a business after a bunch of failed attempts was a small little web agency. So he was a computer genius, and I was a business guy, knowing relationships and talking to people and selling. So we started building websites for hairdressers, for a shoe store, for a printer shop, like small local businesses. And with the idea of, okay, let's sell a simple website for 500 euros each. And it's a really shitty idea, because small businesses don't have money. They don't want to buy stuff. They are really, really picky with what you're doing. And when we thought that, we can build this website in 5 hours and we will make 100 euros an hour, when in fact it became 50 hours or 100 hours and 5 to 10 euros an hour, it was completely unsustainable. And instead we started building websites for ourselves, because we couldn't make this work. And we started doing affiliate marketing websites, so basically marketing online on a commission basis. And we started doing that for bingo. And we worked really hard for the first 3 months or so, and we made zero, nada. So we started trying a lot of other things, and we built websites about various stuff, and nothing worked. We just failed at every try we did. And after like a year, we looked back into these bingo sites that we had looked at, and it turned out that we actually made about 1,000 euros in the last year without even knowing it. And this is now 2008, I think. So I'm 20 years old, and felt like, wow, finally, this is the next thing I could actually succeed at. This can be something. And that became the beginning of that. That became Catena Media, like keep growing those kinds of websites.
So Catena Media was essentially you building affiliate websites, and you'd get commissions from links that you had on the websites. Is that correct?
Yes. So between 2010 and 2012, me and Emil, it was just the two of us more or less. We had some consultants and stuff. applying this strategy then of how can we compare online services like bingo, but also business cards, insurances, fashion loans, all kinds of things. We built websites about that to see how can we turn this into something. And if it worked, then we did more of that. And if it didn't work, we took that and we tossed it. And for about 2 years, we were playing around with this. We were having a lot of fun, and it really skyrocketed. And in 2012, we took on an investment company. So we sold 50% of the business to them. And that's when Catena Media started. And these guys came from the casino industry, and we had never done any casino before. But we then applied our strategies and what we knew about online marketing on casino. And casino was booming and growing a lot, and everyone were making a lot of money from it. And it turned out to be the perfect fit. So that's when it started, and we built tons of websites about that.
Yeah. And can you give a sense of like how much, when you said it was taking off and skyrocketing, can you give a sense of that in terms of like numbers of how much money you were actually making through this business?
Okay, so in 2012, when we sold the business, it was the two of us. We were 22 years old, and we made a profit of maybe 40,000 euros a month, split two ways.
Wow.
So obviously a fortune
insane.
for any 22-year-old, well, a fortune for anyone. And then we took on investors, and 2013 was a year when we took on far too much cost. So we almost went bankrupt during that journey and started way too many projects at the same time, wanting to achieve far too many things simultaneously. But yeah, we managed to get out of that alive, even though it was a close call. And after that, it just kept skyrocketing. So in 2016, on the 11th of February, my 28th birthday, actually, then both mine and Emil's 28th birthday, coincidentally, were born on the same day in the same hospital by parents who knew each other. Fun fact. So on our 28th birthday, we took the company to the stock exchange, and that was valued at about 200 million euros at the time. And yeah, as you mentioned, I sold shares for about 15 million euros that day.
It's amazing. And I definitely want to talk about that situation with the IPO. But I guess just to give the audience a bit of an idea, because I mean, it sounds great, and you kind of glossed over, I guess, this year, 2013, and you said you managed to get through it. But I'd be really interested to maybe dive a little bit deeper into that, just to understand, I guess, what was the kind of emotional toll that year took on you? Because from what I understand, there was a lot that you had to overcome to get to the point where you did eventually IPO.
Yeah, definitely. So in the startup scene in general and everything around entrepreneurship, it's often very focused on the big exit or the big money, and it's not that much attention to what's the toll of getting there. And yeah, to just give an image of what it looks like, for years I had a bottle of whiskey next to my bed because I couldn't fall asleep unless I drank alcohol, because I was so up in the pace all the time, so stressed out and so many things. So the last thing I did every night was to reach for a bottle. I was reaching for the whiskey the last thing I did every day, because that was what I had to do to kind of get my body down in pace. And I think it says quite a bit about what it takes to do a journey like this. I don't think that I wasn't in a good place. I don't think anyone around me closest in the team were in a very good place, because we pushed ourselves to the limit and far beyond. So Emil, who I founded the business with, we're obviously super childhood friends since we were born on the same day in the same hospital by parents who knew each other. So we're very, very close. And I pushed him a lot because he's a computer genius kind of guy. He didn't care that much about money, and I did. And he got severely burned out. So one day he just crashed. He didn't come back to the office. I couldn't reach him. I was in a bad place to start with, and my first feeling was just anger towards him for not showing up, for being a bad example to the team, for all of these things. And I wasn't compassionate at all. I was just pissed. And I can see looking back now how I put him in that spot to a large extent. Like, I pushed myself in a way that was definitely not healthy, and I wasn't feeling shit. And I pushed him and I pushed other people around me to the breaking point. And yeah, would take Emil like 3 years to recover from this, and it's first now that we are managing to repair our relationship again. And yeah, this is the side of the entrepreneurial journey that's rarely spoken about, which I'm guessing is the way it looks in pretty much all fast-growing businesses, because it takes sacrifice to do that, and it's not healthy, and it's not a happy place to be. So I was very successful, quote unquote, in terms of money, but I was a miserable piece of crap in this, which my health was obviously crap because I was drinking every night and I didn't sleep properly, and I didn't work out like I should or eat like I should because I was in the office all the time. And the same went then for a lot of my closest relationships, which I neglected. I didn't spend enough time or attention with my girlfriend, so we ended up breaking up. And yeah, that happened to Emil, my business partner, and all of these things kept going on around it.
Yeah. And yeah, thank you for sharing and talking about it, because you're right. People hear the €40,000 a month profit and the €50 million exit, and that's all they hear. But there's often this behind the scenes that people don't talk about, which is the struggle and the sacrifices that were made to get there. So it's important for people to understand that side of things as well, for sure.
Yeah, and that's the real part of it.
100%. So you mentioned before in 2016 you did IPO and you cashed out of the business. So I was curious to know, what was that experience like? How did that feel when you finally got to this point where you could sort of dust your hands of the business, sell those shares, cash out, and make €15 million? What was that experience like?
Okay, so there is a picture of me. If you Google Erik Bergman images, I guess you will find it, where it's from the day of the IPO, and I'm holding the bell. So you're ringing the bell to open the stock exchange, and I'm screaming, but it's not a joyful scream. I'm all white in my face, and my eyebrows are down like I'm angry, and I'm just screaming like a crazy person. And I think that image describes pretty well what I was going through, that it was more a feeling of relief, like I had survived this, than it was a feeling of joy at that very moment. It was like, okay, for so long time I just wanted to get out of this and be done with it, and now finally it was there. So I had money for quite a long time. I had money before. The money, sure, 50 million euros is a lot of money, but it doesn't change your life that much from 20,000 euros a month. I don't spend the 20,000 a month today, so it doesn't really matter. But it was more that feeling of relief and being done with that accomplishment, and then obviously knowing that I'm financially secure for the rest of my life, knowing that I never have to work a single day, I can live where I want, travel where I want. It's an amazing feeling of achievement, and I'm super proud of that. So with that came a feeling of euphoria, and it's like I had 1,000 little tiny elves dancing around, having a rave party in my body, kind of just being in that experience. But how long do you think a feeling like that can last?
I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't last very long. Like, no feelings lasts very long. So it lasts for maybe a week or a couple of weeks, and then it's like, okay, now what? This is what I've been fighting for. This is what I've been doing all these sacrifices for. What else is there? And what is it that creates happiness that money can't buy? So there are things that create happiness that money can buy, and it's safety, and it's where you live, how you travel. Giving away money creates happiness. There's all these things that you can do with money that creates happiness, but there are also all these things that you can't do with money that creates happiness. That relationships, like, might be a big cliche, but you can't buy love. You can't buy real friendships, and both love and friendship can actually get quite complicated when one person have a lot of money. I mean, imagine just if your best friend won 10 million euros in the lottery tomorrow. It would probably have an impact on your relationships with that person. And that's what happens here, is it has an impact on all my relationships. And I had completely neglected my health, so I couldn't just buy health. It's not something you go to the store. So all of these things were still there and created issues and struggles and challenges around them.
Yeah. So interesting to hear that, because like you said, a lot of people, they may not get that big exit like you had, but they are kind of thinking in their head, I just got to keep working just to get to this eventual point where I can kind of cash out, and then all my problems will be solved and I'll be set for life. So it's so interesting to hear from you, someone who's had that kind of experience, as to what that is actually like in reality. So yeah, it's great to hear.
I think that everyone is chasing feelings. We're not chasing money, we're chasing whatever money is representing to us. And that could be self-confidence, which you can kind of get from money in a sense. Not real self-confidence, but you can get stuff that represents success. You can get the apartment, you can live where you want, you can travel, you can do all of these things, which is partly success and partly happiness. But if you sacrifice relationships, you sacrifice health, you sacrifice the things that really matter to get there, then you're just going to lose. And to be able to buy those things that matter, it's not that expensive. You can live pretty much where you want without making shitloads of money. You can feel safe for you and your family without making 15 million euros. You don't need that. You can have your kids in a good school. You can travel a little bit whenever you want. You probably have enough to give away. And I think that this goes for most of the people just listening to this. They have most of these things, and that's what money can create in happiness. The other things is it takes time and engagement, and if you sacrifice those things to get money, then you're just on the losing end.
Such an amazing message, and I think if people can really listen to that and understand what you're saying, and hopefully they don't have to go through an experience where they do burn all the good things in their life in the pursuit of money, to find that it doesn't sort of give them everything they hoped it would. Not saying that was necessarily the case with you, but you do see it a lot where people do just completely trash their life in the pursuit of money. So to not have to go through that, if they can listen to what you're saying, I think is a great thing. So what happened after that? So the feeling of euphoria lasted about a week, as you said, and then you were kind of set for life in terms of like finances, but you were back to this what next feeling. So what did happen next?
Yeah, so for a while I was just completely lost the inspiration and the motivation to do anything. I think that I had pushed that stress away for so long time, just looking at this goal. Whenever I reach that, I can relax, and then you reach it and you just everything catches up with you. I think that's what happened to me. I didn't really want to do anything. I had neglected my girlfriend for a long time, and we had our challenges and our struggles, and we ended up actually breaking up because now suddenly we could focus on that. Before I just distracted myself with work, and I think if it wasn't for work, we'd probably broken up a long time earlier because we didn't manage to sort out what we struggled with. And so if I wasn't lost before that, then I was definitely lost now. We had spent 7 years together and she was my everything. And yeah, got into a dark place out of all of this. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what next. I didn't feel like working more with my previous company. I didn't feel like starting anything else up. And I got involved with some charities. So a friend of mine, another friend who's also named Emil, who, by the way, is the one I'm doing the Becoming Great podcast together with. He introduced me to this charity organization in Ghana, who have a school for kids, teaching them computers, which they've never seen computers before. And they needed about $15,000 to complete their school building. So they were building their first own school building, and I decided to donate that money to them. And 6 months later, we went down there to to visit. And I remember coming into the schoolyard, and on the right side I have these 3 gray buildings. They're like worn out, they have steel bars through the window, and they look like prisons. And on the left side there is this yellow, green and red building that just looks like a splash of colors, and that was the school building that they had built, and it just felt so right to see that. And the classes here were voluntary, starting after school hours. And I mean, looking back, when I went to school, I mean, if there was a class outside of school hours when you were 10 years old, would you have gone to it? No.
No way.
No way. And neither would I. So I didn't expect that many kids to show up. And when the clock turned 3, there was 100 kids outside standing on the line all across the schoolyard. And we only had 70 computers, so they couldn't even fit. So we couldn't take them all in. And it was just inspiring to see how eager someone could be to learn when I never felt that eagerness myself, at least not in school. And the school class went on. It was interesting to see them, and it felt very beautiful to see how the kids wanted to learn. But the big shift came later that afternoon, when I was speaking to Torsten, who's the founder behind this organization, and he told me that the other teachers from the other school buildings, they could borrow this new school building whenever they wanted during the day, because they were not having classes there. And it was on one condition. And it was that in here, you never beat the kids. And when he said that, my mind just went blank, and I didn't know what to say. I was like, of course you never hit kids. To me, that's so obvious. But here, that wasn't obvious. So in the gray school buildings, the kids got hit. They got beaten, and they had to be afraid. I mean, just imagine, how would it feel like to go to school if you know that you were going to get beaten up? But in this school building, the kids were safe. They were so voluntarily there that they didn't have to, and they were willing to stand in a line all afternoon just to get in. So just they wanted to be there. They could play there, they could have fun, and they were safe. And I felt there like, wow, this is what money is about. This is what I can do. This is meaningful. And I want the world to be more of a splash of colors, and whatever I can do to help it to get there. So that moment became a big shift for me. And after that, I started involving myself in all different kinds of charities and donating money to different causes, traveling to see them and see what it was, and trying to learn as much as possible about it. And I didn't quite find my place. It's not my place to build a school. It's not my place to be in an orphanage in Uganda or help out in the slum in Cape Town in South Africa. I tried it, but it wasn't my thing. But instead I asked myself, okay, Erik, what are you good at? And my answer to that was to run companies and making money and building that. So then the next was, okay, how can you do that to help out? How can you use that skill set to anything? It's like, yeah, I could start a business, but this time give all the money away because I don't need it. It's not going to make myself happier, but I can definitely make meaningful difference with it. So that became that journey that shifted my focus and my attention and became the inception of what today is great.com.
Yeah, it's cool. It's great. It's an amazing story. And great.com, so that's your latest project, which, as you mentioned, is basically you running a business which is your skill set of what you're good at, and then taking all the profits for that and using it for charitable causes, which is amazing. So, how is great.com going? How long have you been working on that now, and what sort of things are you working on with that?
Yeah, so the idea has been in my head for a couple of years now, and I've been mapping it up and doing this, and we've been doing it fully focused for the past 6 months, so it's still very new. And the intention is to do pretty much the same thing that I've been doing before. So we're going to do affiliate marketing for casinos, but we're going to give away all the profits. And as it seems right now, we will focus all our efforts on the environmental causes. That we believe that the planet is what's the most important to actually do something with. And if we can take a problem that humanity has, which is gambling, and we can turn that into a solution of another problem that humanity has created, then we think that's a good trade, even though I can see casinos it's a horrible thing to start with. But if we can use that as a tool to make a difference in solving something which is an even more horrible problem, then I'd say that's a win. So we're not live with our first product yet. We have no revenues at the moment. I'm funding everything out of my own pocket, but hopefully we'll do a very big difference over time.
Yeah, I love it. It's such a good idea, and I'm sure based on your past experience, you'll be able to make that very successful and be able to do some amazing work with it. So I'm looking forward to following that journey. Tell me as well about the podcast you started, Becoming Great. What made you want to start that?
Okay, so we started that on New Year's as well. So we've done, 25 episodes now or something like that. And to me, I'm very passionate about the medium that is podcasting. To be able to talk and tell a story, use your voice, use your tonality, not just reading, not just a paper. Be able to listen to it while driving or running or cooking or whatever. So I'm passionate about that way of communicating, that you can actually build a relationship with someone who's listening at a very large scale. So there could be 100,000 people listening to your message, and they will receive it, and it will be received in a much more genuine way than a text or something else could be. So I wanted to do that, and I wanted to learn how to do that from a podcast perspective, and I wanted to share our story and our vision. Like, what is it that we're doing? Who are the people behind this? Why are we doing that? And we've talked a lot about where do we want this to go and how do we want to do this, but it's even also on deeper topics like, okay, how does it feel to work in the gambling industry? How does it feel to actually... I've probably been responsible for people committing suicide one way or another because I've gotten so many people into gambling, and we've ended up in those kinds of conversations in a podcast as well, and it becomes very, very real when we're talking about it. And I'm doing this with Emil, who I'm learning a lot together with, and he's really good at asking questions. We're both experiencing and exploring these topics together. So I'm really enjoying the podcast format to communicate with.
Yeah, it's a cool idea, and I listened to a few of your episodes, and as you said, I really like the way it's not just you kind of reciting or sharing information. Some of them are, you're sharing your thoughts, and it's kind of a well thought out point of view or perspective, but some of these episodes are you just exploring. It's you and Emil, and you've just got a topic that you want to discuss. You don't know where it's going to go, and you're both asking great questions to each other and going deep on the topic. So it's really fascinating to be a fly on the wall in those sort of conversations where it does get very real, as you said. And you're also kind of just documenting the journey of what you're doing with Great.com. So I think it's a fantastic project, and it'll be interesting to be able to listen back to those once you've kind of really kicked things off with that business. So if someone wanted to listen to that podcast, have you got a recommendation for like a good episode to start at, to give a good idea of what that's all about? Yeah,
so episode 22 and 23, or if it is 23 and 24, are two episodes that are about, if you're the first time listener, we just released those two. So one of them is called A Great Place to Start, which is about me and Emil and kind of how we want to do the podcast. So that's perfect if you want to learn more about us or the kind of concept. And the next one is called Great in 30 Minutes, which is more about what is it actually what we will do, how will we make money, how does this make sense from a commercial perspective. And the episode that I'm the most happy about is probably episode 14, I think. I think it's called Email Raise Your Game, and it's about things that I've learned during my journey in online business, like how do you write emails, and how do you write emails in ways so people feel excited to reply to them. Because I get so many emails, and sometimes I get really excited to reply, and sometimes I really don't. And it's been very curious for me I've been curious about understanding what is it that gets my attention, and then how could I use that in a way to communicating with others. So I think that is the most valuable episode to listen to from someone from the outside who just wants to learn things, because that's where it becomes very specific. So that's three very different episodes that shows a bit of what we're doing.
That's awesome. And yeah, I'll make sure we link up the podcast in the show notes so that people can easily find that. Definitely go listen to for all the people listening. Some great value shared there. So, sort of coming up at the end of the interview here, Erik, but just a few quick questions just to close us out here. Just curious, what's coming up next for you? So obviously, Great.com is your main project, the podcast as well. I guess over the next sort of 12 months, are there any major kind of projects or things that you're looking to achieve or work towards?
So one of the things that I'm envisioning is to get more people inspired of the idea of building a business with the purpose of giving away profits. And to get people to feel inspired of giving rather than buying or hoarding a lot of material stuff that at least didn't make me happy. So a part of that is to actually get really good at communicating in podcasts, but also on Instagram. So I'm doing a lot of things on Instagram at the moment, and social media in general, where I'm hoping to, over the next 10 years, become a Gary Vee kind of character in this, because I believe it makes such a huge impact. I think that Gary Vee is probably one of the most powerful people on the planet, because he's talking about entrepreneurship to such a big audience, and people are interested in making a difference and making a change. And if you can get millions of people like that to listen, then you can make a huge impact. So I'm doing a lot right now to learn about this, how to be able to build an audience like that and playing around with it. And that's going to be a very big part of the next 12 months for me. And it's going to be a big part of the marketing strategy as well, then, for Great, and be a part of this. If I can inspire people as well as getting them engaged in what we're doing, then it's a double win.
Awesome. Look forward to watching that. And again, we'll link up your Instagram, because I've been following you for a while now, and I've seen some of the great content you put out there as well. So that's definitely worth checking out for all the people listening too. So is there anything I haven't asked you, Erik, or just anything you want to really make sure you pass on to the audience before we finish up here?
So something I'm passionate about, and if I were to give one advice to myself going back, it would be to just begin. That I think the biggest reason why we don't succeed at things is that we don't start, and we're so afraid of failing. And I've failed so many times at so many things in my life, and some of my most horrible memories goes back to failing. And at the same time, I see those experiences some of the most valuable experiences of my life. That if those didn't happen, none of the other things would happen. And a lot of the times I haven't had a good idea. I've just taken a shitty idea and I've started. And it has led to so many other things down the line that the first idea is probably a crappy idea. So if you're thinking about starting a business or a podcast or whatever it is, your first idea probably sucks. But the only way to know that is to try it. And when you try it, you're going to start looking at it from other angles, and you're going to come up with a second idea or a third idea. And it might be the fourth idea that takes you to where you want to go. It was the fourth business project we had that actually became Catena. The first three were complete failures. But we wouldn't have gotten to that if we wouldn't have started with a crappy idea. So I think that's starting with whatever it is that you're thinking about, if that's a podcast or a website or anything else, and just be quick to be open to other things and move on with it. That's something I would definitely say that to myself if I could go back in time.
Yeah, I love it. Such good advice. Just start. Really great advice. So, last question, Erik, is just what's the best way for people to connect with you if they want to check out the podcast, follow you on Instagram, or any other way to connect? What would you say are the best ways?
Yeah, so Instagram, the podcast, and I'm doing quite a few things on LinkedIn as well. So just Google for Erik Bergman and you'll find whatever it is that you're looking for.
Awesome. And I'll make sure they're linked up as well in the show notes so that that's easy to find. But yeah, everyone listening, this has been an amazing story. Erik's had an amazing life, really, about from his humble beginnings to making more money than he knew what to do with, and then the projects he's doing now that are more charitable focused with Great.com. And just as you've heard from the last hour, it's been a fascinating journey, and I really appreciate you sharing it on this podcast, Erik. So thank you very much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to this interview with Erik today. Really hope you got a lot of value from it. It was a really fascinating story. Erik is an amazing guy with some amazing stories. So if you did enjoy this podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you would go into Apple Podcasts and leave me a rating and review. And that really helps me out just by boosting the show's ranking, getting more people listening to it, and spreading this message to more people. And if you don't use Apple Podcasts, you can still help me out. You can take a screenshot of yourself listening to this interview, post it to Instagram stories, tag me in that, and also tag Erik. And if you could do one of those two things, it would really help me out and it would mean a lot. So hope you have a great day, and thanks for listening.